All right, this is Honors Algebra 2 Pre-Calculus. We're doing 8.7 in Algebra 2. This is our second video in the series. We are still simplifying radical expressions. So to simplify expressions involving multiple roots, it's easiest to first write each root in its simplified form. For addition and subtraction, roots that have the same radical and radicand can be combined as like terms. So as an example, if I'm asked to add 2 plus the square root of 50, to the quantity 4 minus the square root of 8, I cannot combine the square root of 50 and the square root of 8 as they are currently written. What I can do is recognize that the square root of 50 is a square root of 25 times 2, so it can be rewritten as the square root of 25 times the square root of 2, which is 5 root 2, which is what I've done right here. And that I can rewrite the square root of 8 as the square root of 4 times 2. Notice that the distinction here is that I've made the 25 and the 4 are perfect squares, and the other thing, the 2 in this case, is not, right? I get root 4 times root 2, which is a 2 root 2, and you can see I rewrote that here. Now they are both the same radical, which is a square root, and the same radicand, which is a 2. So I have 2 plus 5 root 2 plus the quantity 4 minus 2 root 2. So that's a 2 plus 5 root 2 plus 4 minus 2 root 2. So the 2 and the 4 can be combined to give me a 6. And the 5 root 2 and the negative 2 root 2, think about that like it's a 5x minus a 2x would give you 3x, right? 5 root 2 minus a 2 root 2 gives you a 3 root 2. So that's same idea. All right, so we're going to go ahead and fully simplify each radical expression. So the first thing I need to do is simplify the roots. So I'm going to look at this root 12 and say, all right, does it have a perfect square factor? Well, this is a root 4 times 3, right? That's what 12 is. And the reason I picked 4 and 3 is because 4 is a perfect square and 3 is not, right? So I took the biggest perfect square factor that I could find and I took that out. What that leaves me with is a root 4 times a root 3 or a 2 root 3, okay? I'm going to do the same thing with the 75. And I say, okay, chances are, since I was stuck with this 3 here, I'm probably going to get stuck with a 3. So what's 75 divided by 3? Well, that's convenient. It's a 25. So this is a 25 times 3, and 25 is totally a perfect square. So this is a root 25 times a root 3, which means it's a 5 root 3. So now, let's clean this up. This is a 6 plus 2 root 3 plus a negative 7 plus 5 root 3. I can combine the regular numbers. The 6 and the negative 7 will give me a negative 1, and I can combine the root 3's. I end up with 2 of the root 3 plus 5 of the root 3. That's a 7 root 3, and that's my answer. So again, the first rule is that you need to simplify those roots so that you end up with the same radical and the same radicand. So let's do that again with the 18 and the 50. So I look at 18 and I think, what's the biggest perfect square factor? And I'm pretty sure it's a 9 times a 2, right? So this is root 9 times 2, which means I'm going to get root 9 times root 2 or a 3 root 2, right? That's what I can replace this with, this 3 root 2. I notice that I have a 2 and I think, okay, that probably means I'm also stuck with a 2 here. So what's 50 divided by 2? Oh, look, it's a 25 times 2. How convenient, 25 is a perfect square. Right, so root 25 times root 2 means I'm going to get a 5 root 2. So that's what I can replace this with, is a 5 root 2. So this is a negative 5 plus, minus, my bad, minus 3 root 2. So negative 5 minus 3 root 2. And then this negative is going to get distributed. So it's going to be a negative 6 minus a 5 root 2. Well, when I combine the regular numbers, I get a negative 5 and a negative 6, which is a negative 11. When I combine the root 2's, I have a negative 3 root 2 and a negative 5 root 2, which is going to be a negative 8 root 2. And that's my answer. All right. Go ahead and give this one a try. You can certainly pause me if you want to try without me. So I see the 32 and I think, hey, that's a 16 times 2, right? So that's going to end up being a 4 root 2, right? 4 root 2 because it's root 16 times root 2. I look at the 98 and I don't immediately think what its factors are, but I see that I'm stuck with the 2 here and I think, oh, this has got to be a 2 times something, and I pretty quickly get that it's a 2 times 49, right? So this is a 7 root 2. Once I know that, this is a negative 3 plus 4 root 2 plus a 6 plus 3 root 2. So now I just combine the like terms. My regular numbers are a negative 6 and, negative 3 and a 6, so that's a 3. And then my root 2's are a +4 and a +3, so that's a +7 root 2. We do the same thing with the 45 and the 20. I look at 45 and think, hey, that's a 9 times a 5, right? So I think, cool, that's a 3 root 5, right? The root 9 would be a 3. So I have 8 minus 3 root 5. And then when I look at the 20, I think, oh, hey, I was stuck with a 5 here. I'm probably going to get stuck with a 5 here. Sure enough, that's 4 times 5, so that's a 2 root 5. And then this negative is going to get distributed, so I'm going to get a +2 minus a 2 root 5. When I combine the 8 and the positive 2, I get a 10. When I combine the negative 3 root 5 with the negative 2 root 5, I get a negative 5 root 5, and that's my answer. All right. So for products, we're going to multiply the same way we'd multiply polynomials, and then we just simplify the resulting radicands. So let's say I have a 3 plus root 2 times a 1 minus 4 root 2. Well, I'm going to FOIL, right? So first is going to be the 3 times the 1. Outer is going to be the 3 times the 4 root 2, and I put the negative in front here, right? It's a negative 4 root 2, right? Notice that you can only multiply things outside roots or inside, like things in roots get multiplied by things in roots, things outside roots stay with things outside roots. My inside is going to be a positive root 2 times the 1, and my last is going to be a root 2 times the negative 4 root 2. So 3 times 1 gives me a 3. I don't know where the 8 came from. Not sure what my brain did with this. Oh, sorry. I do know where the 8 came from. It came from right here, my bad. So I wrote them out of order. So I have this negative 3 plus the 4 root 2, which is right here. I have this root 2, which is right here. And then this is a 4 times a root 4, which would be a 4 times a 2. That's where I got the 8. Sorry, I was expecting myself to have written them in the other order, so that's my 8. Right, so this was the F, that was the L, O, and I, written in a weird order. So I can combine the 3 and the negative 8 to get a negative 5. I can combine the negative 12 root 2 with the positive 1 root 2 to get a negative 11 root 2. All right, so let's go ahead and clean some stuff up. So when I FOIL this, right, so my first is going to be the negative 3 times the 4, so that's a negative 12. Outer is going to be a negative 3 times the 2 root 2, right, so this is outer. And that's going to be a negative 6 root 2. You can't multiply stuff outside the root with stuff inside the root. So it's the negative 3 times the 2, but the stuff inside the root has a power on it. You can't multiply into powers like that. Inner is going to be a 20 root 2, right, because it's the 5 times the 4, but I can't multiply the stuff inside the root. And then last is going to be, and this is the one that's the tricky one for a lot of people, right? When I do 5 root 2 times 2 root 2, I have to multiply the stuff that's not inside the root, and then I can multiply the stuff inside the root by itself. So the 5 times the 2 gives me my 10. That's the stuff outside the root. And I can multiply the stuff inside the root and keep it inside the root. That's how I get a root 4. So I end up getting that this is a 10 times a 2, which is a 20. Once I have that, I can combine my like terms. The negative 12 and the 20 will give me an 8. The negative 6 root 2 and the positive 20 root 2 gives me a positive 14 root 2. And there you have it. All right, let's do another one. All right, so when we FOIL this one, right, my first, right, so first is going to be an 8 root 3, right, because I can multiply the 4 times the 2, but I can't multiply into the root. Outer is going to be plus a 20. Inner is going to be the one that's tricky here. So I'm going to get a negative 2, and then it's going to be root 3 times root 3, which is root 9. We'll deal with that in a sec. And then last is going to be minus 5 root 3. So this ends up being a negative 2 times a 3. So it's a regular old number. So I have an 8 root 3 plus a 20 minus a 6 minus a 5 root 3. I can combine the root 3 terms, and I get a 3 root 3. I can combine the 20 and the negative 6 and get a 14, and that's my answer. All right, so go ahead and try a P4. All right, so when we FOIL, I'm going to get a negative 12. Outer is going to be plus 18 root 5. Inner is going to be plus a 20 root 5. And last is going to be minus a 30 root 25, which we'll deal with in a sec, right? So again, I can multiply the stuff inside roots with stuff inside roots, and that's because they have the same power, right? So root 5 times root 5 is going to be root 5 times 5, which is how I get root 25. But they're both inside the root, right? That's the trick. You can't multiply stuff outside the root with stuff inside the root. So I'm going to get that this is a negative 12 plus a 38 root 5, right? And then this is a 30 times a 5, so that's going to be minus a $1.50. My final answer seems to be a negative 162 plus 38 root 5. And it doesn't matter if you write the root stuff at the front and then the negative 162 or vice versa. All right, down here, right, when we FOIL, our first term is going to be a negative 20 root 6. Outer is going to be a plus 12 root 36. And if you just wanted to jump to making that a 6, that's fine. Inner is a plus 5, and last is a minus 3 root 6. So this ends up being, I have this negative 20 and this negative 3 root 6. There's nothing that's going to change those, so it's a negative 23 root 6. This is a 12 times a 6, right, which should give me a 72. So I get a 72 plus 5, so I think my final answer is a negative 23 root 6 plus a 77. And again, you could write the 77 minus the 23 root 6. It doesn't matter. That's totally fine. And that's it for that video.